Hi everybody, this is Brian Kuh with another ROK video, and today I'm going to explain why I think Warriors Unbound is the best KvK map in Rise of Kingdoms. And this is a relevant thing to discuss because as we speak, 6 very strong Imperium kingdoms, including 960, 1093, 1307, and 2489, have all registered for Warriors Unbound in the current Lost Kingdom pop. So for any players from those kingdoms that's looking for information on the map, I'm going to talk about my overview of this map first, and then I will go into depth about the artifact system and the map overview, and there are time codes in the video and the description if you want to skip forward to those sections. Now, right off the bat, I would say that both Warriors Unbound and Siege of Orleans are better maps than the old standbys. The reason I think Warriors Unbound is better than Heroic Anthem, for example, is because every zone you fight over in Warriors Unbound is important. In Heroic Anthem, when you go into Zone 5, you face your enemy for the first time, and you fight for a zone that has no strategic significance and has one 10% March speed sanctuary. Whereas in Warriors Unbound, when you go into Zone 5, you fight for 2 Hurons that give you actual fighting buffs, and you fight to gain access to a Zone 6 that you would otherwise be unable to enter if you didn't win the zone. And once you're in Zone 6, the fighting remains relevant throughout until the war is decided, which is a big reason why it's better than Strife of the Eight, which is that in Warriors Unbound, victory is achieved through early, gradual wins. Because what happens in Strife of the Eight is that, yes, fighting for Zone 6 is important, but then there is a week-long lull where both sides put up fort walls at their level 6 passes and prevent the other side from breaching Zone 6s that are under your control. And so ultimately, the war comes to a halt and is decided in Kingsland. Whereas in Warriors Unbound, the fighting is going to, once the Zone 6 is open, the fighting is essentially going to continue until the war is over. And many wars will be decided before Kingsland even opens, because there are 3 Zone 6s, and inevitably one of the 2 sides is going to control 2 of those 3 Zone 6s and have a huge advantage. Now, in terms of why I think Warriors Unbound is better than Orleans, first of all, Warriors Unbound has a mechanic in which you can only place forts at holy sites and passes. And so this is a cool mechanic that makes fighting in these large zones more of a flag battle, a fast-paced run-and-gun flag battle, rather than War of Forts. The second reason I prefer Warriors Unbound over Orleans is because artifacts are better than auxiliary skills. Artifacts are almost like playing a first-person shooter, whereas auxiliary skills are more like an RPG. Artifacts is simply one item that you apply to a secondary commander, which makes that commander a different troop type. Right now you're looking at Captain Rally with Tariq Nevsky, which means she has put an infantry artifact on Nevsky, and so all the stats that Nevsky would normally give to Cavs are applying to infantry instead, and so he works perfectly well as an infantry commander. And so in comparison, auxiliary skills have to be constantly swapped around. If you're a garrison captain or a rally lead, you're constantly swapping your auxiliary skills from your best open field march to your rally. And that is simply a level of tedious micromanagement that, as a garrison captain, I would rather not go through. I would rather just have this one artifact that I can very quickly swap to whatever commander I want. The other thing that these artifacts have done in Warriors Unbound is that it has buffed up the rally game and brought it on to an equal footing with the traditionally superior garrison game. The reason for that is because the three best rally commanders in the game are Tariq, Henry, and Nevsky. Three different troop types. But with Warriors Unbound, you can combine two of those commanders into a single rally. And it really does rev up the meta rallies with this artifact engine. So ultimately you do have this arcade style map where there are no fort walls, where rallies are as strong as garrisons, and you have these giant zones in which to flag from multiple alliances, set up double rallies, flank the enemy, cut off the enemy, and not be at any point slowed down by fort walls or by some impenetrable garrison. So it's a very cool map, and it will be exciting to see what the strongest kingdoms in the game do on it, because they're really just gonna have a knife party and fight it out. In terms of the artifacts, it's really quite simple. Everyone can select one artifact for the entire KvK. You select one certain troop type, and then you can apply that artifact to any secondary commander of the other two troop types. For open field players, the artifacts they're cool and they're kind of useful, but they're not like that big of a deal. With open field, the main thing you're looking to do with an artifact is you're looking to increase your quality marches by 1. So, for example, Bogus in our alliance, he put a Cav artifact on his Nebu for this KvK, which allowed him to go from having 4 quality open field marches to 5 open field marches. That's really what you're looking to do in the open field. If you are someone new, and if you're someone new to Season of Conquest, and let's say you have Nevsky and Scipio, well, what you can do is you can put the Cav artifact on Scipio, and then you can just run around with a Nevsky Scipio march, just running around with one march, one insanely good march, and having a good time in the open field. So it's going to be good for that type of dynamic as well. As far as rallies, look, Tariq, Nevsky, Henry, those are the 3 commanders you're going to be using to rally in Warriors Unbound. As far as which combination of those is the best, it's hard to say. They all slap pretty hard. If I had to guess, I would guess that Tariq Henry or Henry Tariq are going to be the absolute strongest combo, just because, first of all, they're both newer than Nevsky, and second of all, they have rally-specific skills that are quite good, and they both have some counterattack damage and just nice anti-swarm technology that I think will ultimately be a bit more robust than what a Nevsky pair will bring. But they're all honestly quite good, and I'll leave it to either better theory crafters than myself or to these Kraken type players in these Imperium kingdoms to try out all the combos and find out what's the absolute best. In terms of garrisons, I think Flavius at the moment is clearly the best overall garrison commander. And so garrisons aren't buffed up as much by the artifacts because, Flavius is already an infantry garrison. He does buff up the Cav garrison. I think Jan Flavius is going to be the best Cav garrison on this map. But it's not like it makes the Cav garrison overpowered. It just makes the Cav garrison a bit closer to the level of a Flavius Scipio, for example. Now, Ditto's coming into the game, and Ditto could, Ditto Flavius, it's entirely possible that that's going to be an OP garrison. But that remains to be seen. And then I think at a lower level, because obviously a lot of kingdoms struggle to have enough garrisons. There's so many flags to defend that it is often the case that you just don't have enough garrisons to properly defend them all. And there are some kind of interesting combos that you can come up with. Some people in our KvK were running a Artemisia Charles Martel archer garrison, and it actually worked. It worked pretty well, actually. Worked better than expected. So, you know, there are some combos that you can create that will allow you to have a viable garrison when you otherwise would not. The Warriors Unbound map features 6 camps, 4 of which start on the outside of the zone, and 2 of which are here in the middle. 1 in the north, 1 in the south. Every kingdom or every camp has access to 2 zone 5s, one of which is sort of a square box, and the other of which is this very narrow north to south zone. I assume these zones are the same square footage, but it certainly looks or optically feels like the north to south zones are bigger. There are 2 Hurons in each of these zone 5s. And one feature of the Warriors Unbound map is there are a lot of very significant holy sites. After fighting in zone 5, you're then able to enter zone 6, which features 2 sanctums and 3 circles, 2 of which are identical and feature the healing speed and hospital capacity. And then there is 1 circle that has counterattack damage reduction and action point recovery. Now, as long as you control both zone 5s, then you can eventually enter both zone 6s through these level 6 passes. But what happens is that first you enter zone 6 through the level 5 pass, which is connected to your starting zone. And for 24 hours, there's only 2 camps that can fight in each of the 3 zone 6s. And then what happens is that 24 hours later, 2 more camps can enter that zone 6, assuming they have fought or negotiated their way towards having pass access to it. The other thing to remember about the Warriors Unbound map is that you can only place forts next to holy sites and passes. And that's displayed quite well here in this zone 6 that we took over, where you can see that we placed forts right next to several of these holy sites, and we initially wrapped flags around these holy sites so that when the second enemy entered through zone 6, they would not be able to fort drop, because we essentially had all the real estate covered around all the holy sites. As it played out, we had already taken the whole zone, and so we had put these 2 forts down, in the 24 hours before the second enemy entered. And so when they did enter this zone 6, they immediately had to try to get through our forts. At the same time, our 4 enemies did have 1 zone 6 to themselves, and they were able to hold that zone safely for 10 days before the level 7 passes opened, and we were able to invade that 3rd zone 6. So the fight that takes place in the zone 6s, the potentially 2 versus 2 fights that take place in zone 6, will last 10 days before you are then able to invade the 3rd zone 6. And at that point, you're going to have another 4 or so days before the passes to Kingsland opens. And so I think what's going to happen in Warriors Unbound is that most wars will be decided before Kingsland, because what you have are wide open zones with a lot of strategic importance. And so inevitably, teams will choose to go balls to the wall in one of these Zone 6s and fight for dominance of the map. And once they gain that momentum, they will, after 10 days, have the ability to invade the final Zone 6 and attempt to disrupt the enemy's remaining entrances into Kingsland. At that point, they will run into a fort wall at the level 7 passes, but most of the damage will have already been done. The final thing I'll point out is that a lot of these are one-way passes. These level 5 passes have been one-way for the entire KvK, right? And so there's no invasion of the home kingdom of the home zone that can take place. And these level 6 passes also stay one way for a very long time. For basically the whole time that we were in this Zone 6 and, defending it, we were not able to enter Lime Hill here for about a week, if not longer. I almost want to say these level 6 passes become a two-way pass after the Zone 7, after the level 7 passes open. So teams always have a bit of safe area in which to operate. And at the same time, there are very, very large zones that you can fight in. And it's very much more of a flag-based battle because you cannot build a fort wall. You can only build forts right around the holy sites. And inevitably, those forts can be bypassed because there is just so much space. And these are altars of darkness, by the way. There's altars in the Zone 6s, and there are also runes in your start zone. We still got a bunch of people chilling out here, even though this Lost Kingdom is going to close in about 90 minutes. But you can see that we're definitely in vacation mode at this point. People have logged off the game and have forgotten about Rise of Kingdoms for a while. And who can blame them? War definitely takes a lot out of you, and your life goes on hold to some extent. So that's it for this video. Please throw a like on it if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'd like to thank Henry from Kingdom 1093 for pointing out that a bunch of Imperiums had signed up for the Warriors Unbound KvK, and hopefully some of the players and leaders from those kingdoms find this video useful, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing what some very big kingdoms do on this very aggressive map. So until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.